Hello and welcome. My name is Sheila Wilson and I am a registered nurse. I'm president of Stop Healthcare Violence. We are a nonprofit group. I am also a host on Passionate World Talk Radio with Lillian Caldwell, who is the CEO, and Jeannie White, who is the station manager. My show is called Stop Healthcare Violence. We have a website and we also have, we're on Facebook. Stop Healthcare Violence and Heal the Healer. My guest today is a nurse, and her name is Liz. She was assaulted. I interviewed her before, and today I am interviewing her because I'd like to see how she is now after the assault. In today's world, people feel, when a healthcare worker gets assaulted, it is part of the job. Just deal with it. I feel we should have a safe place to work in and not get assaulted. Our disclaimer for the station is the views of the guest may not represent the views of the host or the station. So we're getting on with the show. Hello and welcome, Liz. How are you?
Well, hello, Sheila. Thank you for the call. I appreciate that we're following up with the nurses. I think it's very, very important that we follow up to make sure they're still doing well. And I am very well, thank you. And just so you know, I more than likely would still be working, but I've had a stroke. So because I have a left side deficit, I can't go back to work. But other than that, I haven't worked for a couple of years due to the stroke. I was working pretty regularly up until I had the stroke. So whatever I can answer, I'm happy to. Go ahead, Sheila.
Now, Liz, how many years ago did you get assaulted? Do you remember that?
I would say, off the top of my head, about 8. I've had
8 years ago?
About 8 years ago. I had the stroke 5 years ago, and I was working up until I had the stroke, and it was probably about 3 or 4 years before the stroke that I would say about 8 years ago.
Okay. Do you remember the assault?
I certainly do.
Can you tell the audience?
I will never forget it. I had come into work. I was called into work. I worked in the emergency room at the time, and which I did for many years. And when I got called into work, they said they were short nurses because this patient had already hit one of the nurses, and she had to leave because she was so upset. So would I come in, to help cover the hole? So I said, sure. So I went in. The charge nurse gave me the patient because, there was a shortage. So I picked up the patient. I went into the patient. She was a young girl. I went into the patient, and she was withdrawing from, I don't know what she was on, I don't remember, but she was withdrawing, and she was very nasty. And so I introduced myself. She said, I don't want to talk to you. Go get me some, I think she was looking for morphine. I'm in a lot of pain. Go get me some morphine. I said, I will talk to the doctor, and whenever you do, that's when I can give it to you. I can't give it to you before then. So she was very, very agitated. So I asked the doctor if we could give her some Ativan to see if we could calm her down. I mean, you couldn't talk to the girl, Sheila. She was on cloud 9, and I was like, I just started flying. So we could not get to a point where we could talk to each other. So I thought if she had a little something to calm her down, that, maybe we could get to a common ground. And
right.
So the doctor had said, I'm happy to do it. I just can't give it to her right now because we gave her something, I don't know, like an hour and a half before. So I said, all right, I'll come back in a little bit and maybe we can, calm her down. So I went in to tell her, that I was working on getting her something to make her feel better, and she went berserk. She was just she was in the bed, and she was thrashing everywhere. And so she started to swing at me. Now, she was laying in the bed. So she started to swing at me. So I said to the doc, I hate to do this, but we've got to put her in 4-point restraints. She's already hit someone. She's trying to hit me. There's an elderly woman in the next cubicle who's scared to death. So on both sides of her, we had 85, 90-year-old people. So I said, this isn't fair to the rest of the emergency room. We've got to see if we can calm her down. So I called security. We put her in 4-point restraints, and it did calm her down. She wasn't, thrashing and swearing and kicking all that stuff. So I thought, that's good. Now we've got her at a point where I might be able to talk to her. So I got relieved to go to lunch. And the nurse that took over from me, I said, don't let her out of restraints because unfortunately, she hasn't proven herself to us yet. We can't, I'm afraid someone's going to get hurt. So, well, the truth of the matter is she did let her out of restraints because the girl kept screaming she had to go to the bathroom. And you know how we release them, 5 minutes off, 10 minutes on, whatever. So apparently the nurse did release them, but then we had a cold. So she never got to put the restraints back on her. Now, I didn't know this. When she gave me, when I came back from lunch, we just all sort of was doing around the code. Then I went to check on my patients, not knowing that she was not in restraints. So when I walked in to the room, I can still see this, Sheila. Like it happened 5 minutes ago, and it happened at least 8 years ago. And this girl, like friggin' Superman, got up out of the bed and jumped. I didn't even open my mouth and jumped on top of me. She was smaller than me, thank God. And she got on my back, and it took 7 people to get her off of me. She was pounding the crap out of me. And the girl that got her off of me, I'll never forget this, I can't think of the kid's name, weighed about 80 pounds, but she got her off of me. Do you know who I'm talking about? I cannot think of the kid's name.
Carrie?
Carrie got her off of me. Carrie's a nurse now, by the way, because when I was in the nursing home, I saw her when I was in rehab. And so anyhow, she got her off of me, and they were very, very, very quick to put her back in restraints. And she was just awful. I mean, she was really a pitiful sight to see this young girl thrashing and screaming and swearing. The poor women beside her, in the cubicles beside her, were terrified. They were terrified. So now I'm hurt. I can't move my shoulder. And my back is hurt. I've got marks on my face. Not bad marks, but just like, where she had tried to grab me and punch me. And so anyhow, I ended up being seen by one of the doctors and sent home, which defeated the whole purpose of me coming in because they were short-staffed to begin with. And they ended up what is the agency that comes down and does the evaluation?
Management?
Not management. Management never
Risk.
Never,
risk management.
Never said hello. It was the Boston team that lets you know whether they can do outpatient. They come in and talk to them.
The best team. They're called the best team.
Yeah, the best team. They called. We were waiting for them to come anyhow, and I do think they sent her to the Arbor House, and they, said she was restricted from coming back in, which was a friggin' lie, because that she was back in a month and a half later, and I refused to take care of her, and I was out of work a long time. I was out of work about a month and a half because I hurt my shoulder, and it still bothers me, but not to the degree it did. But I went back. I went on workman's comp, which really wasn't. I had a decent co-worker, not a co-worker. I had a decent case manager that worked pretty well with me, and she sent me to this over at St. Elizabeth, some workman comp friggin' place. So I go over. That nitwit said to me, "Oh, you can go back to work. You're fine." I said, I don't think I can. I work in the emergency room. I'm lifting, I'm shoveling around. I said, my shoulder, I can't go back. So he said, "Oh, I said, "No, I'm telling you, I'm in pain." So he said, no, you can go back to work. So I did go back to work, and I was working with this nurse called Colleen, and I went into work, and the first patient I grabbed, but the first patient I went to pull up on the bed, I started crying because the pain was so bad. And Colleen said to me, "You're going home." She was in charge. She said, "You're going home. You're still injured." So, sure enough, I went home. I said, "I think I'm having a heart attack." She said, "It's not a heart attack. It's your friggin' arm." So, anyhow, I go back to this doctor, and he said, "Oh, I think I made a mistake. You weren't quite ready."
He made a mistake.
Yeah, I was really angry. But anyhow, I was out probably almost 2 months. And then, I went back. The thing that stuck with me was I never heard from management. I never heard from the union. I never heard from the nurse manager. I heard from my other, my co-workers, but I never heard from the powers that be. And I will never, ever forget that. And it angered me so because I called the union and they sort of blew this off. And I went nuts over the fact that nobody cared. There were no security in there. If they had been there, they're walking the ED, so they might have seen this woman jump up to begin with. I don't know for sure whether they would have or not, but it could have been possibly avoided had there been enough staff and had there been security in that building and security in that emergency room, which there wasn't.
Yeah. Did anything happen afterwards? I mean, were you able to get any security after this happened?
Yes. Not thanks to the union, quite frankly. It was my own big mouth that went after the union. I called, I had the union involved. I called the safety people, who the hell are they? The OSHA. I called OSHA. I mean, I made a big stink out of this. So we finally did get security on the 3 to 11 shift. I don't know whether they got it on the night shift or not. I don't remember. But I know we got it on the 3 to 11 shift, but they only gave it to us for about 2 weeks, and then they pulled them off. And I had another incident, which I didn't go out on workman's comp, but I did go to court on, where someone spit at. I was in triage, and someone spit at me. This was another unbelievable case. I just said to the kid, "So what brings you into the emergency room tonight?" He went nuts. He had been waiting for a very long time because we were really, really busy, and he spit at me, and he connected. I was wild. So I called the police. I picked him out. They ended up he had warrants already. To make a long story short, they arrested him. I went to court, and I think he got 30 days in jail or wherever they go. 30 days.
Oh, maybe Brockton.
Yeah, in a psych unit for evaluation.
Yeah.
But this little weasel, the day we were in court, was winking at me. I could not believe it.
Let me repeat this. You said that you went to court and you saw him and he was winking at you?
I'll never forget it. Winking at me. I had made a statement for the judge, and they did send him for he was cuckoo. I thought he was cuckoo. And they did send him for an evaluation. But he, again, was never supposed to come back to the emergency room, to our emergency room at the time, to Connie. And the girl got the same restrictions, and both of them come trotting their butt in 6 months later, because I said, you are aware of who this patient is. Yeah, but we can't refuse care, is what the nurse manager said. I said, then you take care of him.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, that didn't work out at all. Somebody else, one of the other nurses volunteered. I can tell you who volunteered, but one of the other nurses volunteered, which really, really infuriated me, because if he did that to me, why do you think he's not going to do it to you? But
isn't that what really happens? Is that we let people get away with assaulting us?
Exactly. We let everybody. We are the punching bags of the world, and we do not have any rights to be able to say, I'm not taking care of this patient, or I'm not taking care of this patient unless security's in the room, or I'm not taking care of this patient unless we medicate him to keep him calm. Those three options are never held to the nurse. And it really bothers me because we've had other patients that the nurses go in first, and they're accompanied by cops. They're in 4-point restraints before we even get in there, and then the doctors are yelling the orders from across the room. Are you kidding me? Get off your butt and give them yourself. They have no respect for nurses. There is absolutely no compassion. And I'm not even 100% sure that we have compassion for each other. So until we start taking better care of ourselves, worker to worker, coworker to coworker, nobody else is going to listen to us. If we don't stand and unite with the fact that we should not be treated abominably for anyone. You wouldn't go to Macy's and have someone say to you, I'm going to spit in your face, or I'm going to slap you because you don't have the right Coach bag. I mean, this is insane. It's insane the way they're treating nurses, and it's my understanding from some of the nurses that are in the field now. I haven't worked in the field for a few years, but it's my understanding that it's worse, that nobody, the doctors and administration is not willing to provide the proper security that should be held for the nurses. And do you know what Connie told me, Sheila, when I was going to go to court? Oh, you're going to have to do that on your own because Connie they will not back you. That's not our policy. Because I fought with the union about that too. I said, what do you mean that's not your policy? I'm hurt on your premises because you don't have security in there, and we had been asking for security, and you blew us off, Carol, and you never, ever listened to anyone. And more nurses got hurt than we should have all walked out. We should have all walked out, but we didn't. So aren't you glad, Sheila, that you got me to reminisce about my good old days?
Well, yes, I am, because that is exactly what is still going on. There is more people. I have interviewed several people, Liz, and the way that they have been assaulted has been awful. There's been the psychiatric hospitals are very violent, and they also are short-staffed. But the emergency rooms and everywhere else, we say, the emergency room nurses get hurt, but if a patient
throughout the hospital.
It's throughout the whole hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
my feeling is, not to interrupt you, Sheila, but my feeling is, and I talked about this, but then I had the stroke and I never followed through with it. I really, really wish that we could start with the young nurses. I mean, young, I'm not saying young because I'm old. I'm saying young because they're new to the field. That
right.
we could go into the schools and prepare these nurses for some of the things they're going to see. But unfortunately, Curry College, there's a few, Northeastern, they don't want to do that. They don't want you to go in because you could, scare the nurses. I said, scare them. For the love of Jesus, when they hit the floor, they're going to have a heart attack. But
it's called education.
We
really should educate the people going in.
Absolutely. And they should educate the nurses that they have to, and I'm not saying this that they have to put up with, but there is a certain amount of bad behavior that may be accepted if it's like a verbal thing. You can tolerate verbal because that's what we do, but you cannot and should not tolerate physical abuse. You should not have to tolerate any abuse, verbal or physical, but verbal you might be able to de-escalate them. You cannot de-escalate someone who's swinging because you're not supposed to hit them back.
Right. Are you aware, you did say that you haven't been working recently, and are you aware that many hospitals, their security guards are hands-off? So, they can't, you can't say to one of the security guards if they come down, would you restrain this person right now? You can't do anything.
That's changed from when I worked when we were working in the emergency room, because if you called security, they did their job. That's what security is. It's not to look pretty. It's to look. It's to intimidate. And I don't care what whether that's woke or not. It's to intimidate these people into protecting the nurses and making. People are going to act wacky. They're not feeling well. They're on drugs. They're on alcohol. They're withdrawing. There's a lot of reasons that we put up with what we put up with because we're compassionate men and women. But to be physically abused as you're trying to make someone better, or you're trying to help someone to get them into a rehab or a detox or, Pine Street, or, because of Boston, I don't know about the rest of it, but you're trying to make their life easier, but they're so whacked out that the only person they can take their anger and frustration out on is the nurse. Very few doctors get punched in the face. And
True.
There's a reason that nurses are mostly women. Luckily, we have more men now, but they're mostly smaller frame women who are easy targets to take the hit. And it's unfortunate. And unless we start as nurses to protect one another when someone gets hurt and walk off the job, nobody goes to work to be assaulted. You don't work at Filene's, you don't work at Macy's, Costco's, anywhere, and get assaulted. You might get yelled at, you might get verbally abused, but that again is part of what we do, and we make accommodations for because people are not well. But there's no reason to be physically accosted by anybody.
Well, I think you've said it right. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Not that you can repeat, Sheila. No, I do. I wish there was something that we could do. I just don't know what it is. And I feel terrible when I hear about nurses that are, that have been injured or maimed, or it's awful. None of us went into nursing for this. And again,
we didn't.
They do more they should have the same thought in mind for abusive nurses as they do for abusive wives or children. There has to be there's a common denominator there. And I think that if you actually, they want to defund police, they should put all social workers in. Well, I'd love to see some social workers in that emergency room. And let me know how they make out.
Yeah. Well, this has been going on for years, and it's getting worse. And unless something happens, now there's a lot of different views.
I don't know, Sheila. I really don't know, and I wish there was something I could do. I wish I was a stronger advocate for these nurses, but unfortunately, they're not being prepared properly. And as a result, I was a veteran nurse, Sheila, when I got hit. I had worked at one of the biggest trauma centers in the city, and never got hit. And
well, the last statistics that MNA and ENA put together was they did a survey of the nurses, and it said that 70 to 80% of the nurses get assaulted. 70 to 80%.
Wow.
And still, you know, they're talking about they're now getting these pages that if you get into trouble, they'll alarm at the station and security is supposed to come. But if security is hands off, what do they do?
What the hell good are they?
So, I mean, there's still a lot of work. And I think you'll have to come on again. And we'll have to discuss some options and what will be some of the solutions. Would you be available for that?
Sheila, I feel very strongly. Nursing was very, very good as a vocation for me as a single mother bringing up 3 kids. I would be very happy if I had any solutions or could point to any way that we could avoid some of these problems. I wouldn't want my girls to be nurses. I don't want my son to be a nurse. I mean, they're not. But at one time, I thought it was a great job. I would not. I don't want my niece to do it. I mean, one of my nieces is a nurse, and I'm constantly saying to her, watch your back, watch your back, watch your back, because I'm afraid for them. And I think that's awful. I think it's awful. You know, I mean, I can't be the only mother that says, I don't want my, and they wonder why there's shortages. I don't know. All right, Sheila, thank you very much for letting me voice my opinion, and I appreciate the phone call, and I appreciate the follow-up, and good luck with all your duties.
Okay, well, thank you all for listening. I will sign off. And Liz, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I will talk to you later.
All right, thank you, Sheila.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.